Justice creates moral debt, and this debt does not fade with time, it grows heavier. When injustice is committed and left uncorrected, it becomes more than a historical mistake. It turns into an obligation passed from one generation to the next. Societies often hope that the passage of years will soften responsibility, but time does not erase consequences. Instead, it allows the effects of injustice to settle deeper into economic structures, social norms, and lived realities. When freedom is promised, but not fully delivered, the gap between words and reality becomes a silent burden. People inherit conditions they did not choose: limited access to wealth, education, safety, and opportunity. These conditions are not the result of chance or individual failure. They are the direct outcomes of decisions made long ago, decisions that advantage some while deliberately excluding others. That imbalance does not disappear simply because those original decisions are no longer openly defended. Moral debt works much like financial debt. If it is ignored, interest accumulates. Inequality widens, resentment deepens, and trust in institutions erodes. A society that benefits from past injustice while refusing to acknowledge it continues to profit from harm. This is why justice is not just a legal concept, it is an ethical one. It asks not only what was lawful at the time, but what was right and what remains unfinished. Some argue that today's generation should not be held accountable for yesterday's actions. But responsibility is not the same as personal guilt. One can inherit benefits without having caused the harm that produced them. Accepting moral debt is not an accusation. It is an act of honesty. It is the recognition that enjoying advantages created by injustice carries an obligation to repair the damage still visible today. Ignoring moral debt creates instability. Communities that feel unseen and unheard lose faith in the promise of fairness. When people believe the system is designed to remember their suffering but forget its cause, unity becomes impossible. Justice delayed becomes justice denied, not just emotionally but structurally. Confronting moral debt is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. It is the first step toward real healing. A society strong enough to admit what it owes is strong enough to correct its course. Justice begins the moment truth is acknowledged, and moral debt is finally treated not as a burden to avoid, but as a responsibility to fulfill. Reparations are about repair, not revenge. This distinction is essential because misunderstanding it has stalled justice for generations. Repair is not driven by anger or blame. It is driven by responsibility. When harm is done, especially harm that reshapes lives, communities, and opportunities, acknowledgement without correction is incomplete. True justice does not end at recognition. It continues until restoration begins. Revenge seeks to punish, but repair seeks to heal. Revenge looks backward with resentment, while repair looks forward with purpose. It asks a simple moral question. If something was taken unjustly, should it not be restored as fairly as possible? When a system benefits from exploitation or exclusion, repairing that harm is not an act of generosity, it is an ethical obligation. Without repair, apologies become symbolic gestures that soothe conscience but leave reality unchanged. Many fear that reparations will divide society, but division already exists where wounds are ignored. Repair does not create resentment, denial does. When harm is named and addressed honestly, it opens the door to trust. Healing cannot begin where pain is dismissed or minimized. Repair is the language that tells the injured, your suffering was real and it mattered. Reparations are also misunderstood as handouts. They are not charity. Charity depends on goodwill and can be withdrawn at convenience. Repair, on the other hand, is rooted in accountability. It recognizes that damage produced measurable loss, lost wages, stolen labor, denied opportunities, and generational disadvantage. Addressing that loss is not favoritism, it is correction. A society that refuses to repair harm sends a dangerous message. That injustice can be committed without consequence as long as enough time passes. This teaches future systems that exploitation is profitable and accountability optional. Repair breaks that cycle. It establishes a standard that wrongdoing, even when normalized by history, must be confronted and corrected. Repair also benefits everyone, not just those directly harmed. When barriers are removed, talent rises. When opportunity is restored, productivity grows. When trust is rebuilt, social stability strengthens. A repaired society is more unified, more innovative, and more resilient. Reparations are not about reopening old wounds. They are about finally treating them. Unhealed wounds do not disappear. They infect the future. Repair is the courage to heal properly, even when it requires effort, sacrifice, and uncomfortable truth. Only through repair can justice move from words into lasting reality. Systemic inequality is inherited, not accidental. It does not appear randomly, nor does it persist by coincidence. It is built over time through policies, practices, and social structures that favor some groups while restricting others. Once established, these systems reproduce themselves, passing advantage and disadvantage down through generations like an unspoken inheritance. From the moment a child is born, the starting line is already set. Access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, healthcare, and financial security is largely determined before personal effort ever enters the picture. When entire communities are denied these foundations for decades, the outcome is predictable. Struggle becomes normalized, while success is framed as an exception rather than a possibility. This is not the result of personal failure, it is the legacy of designed exclusion. Wealth, in particular, reveals how inequality is inherited. When families are prevented from owning property, accessing fair wages, or building savings, they cannot pass stability to the next generation. Meanwhile, those who benefited from preferential systems accumulate assets that grow over time. This